Hi, hello everyone. This is Jean Bertschmann. I'm your Executive Director here at the Spina Bifida Association for Greater New England. And we are back with our Teal Table Talk 2, try to say that 5 times fast, in our series of Teal Table Talks that we're doing for our virtual walk and roll and resource fair for the month of July. So this week in walk and roll, we are focusing on independent living. And we have a panel of some young adults who are going to talk about their experiences living independently. And so we're just going to have kind of a casual roundtable coffee type conversation. But before we get started, I want to give a special thanks to our sponsors who we're very grateful to for all of their support. So our silver sponsor this year is Coloplast. Our bronze sponsors this year are Boston Children's Hospital Neurosurgery Foundation, Mass General Hospital for Children, Hollister, Permobile, and Mobility Works. And our friend level sponsor is National Seating and Mobility. So with all that said, I'm going to open this up and ask everybody to introduce themselves, and then we'll just have a conversation. So I'll start with Sarah, if you'd like to introduce yourself to everybody.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I live in Portland, Maine. I'm 32 years old, living with Spina Bifida, and I've been involved with the association for a number of years, kind of on and off, and now I serve on the board.
Awesome. And Santara?
Hi, I'm Santara. I also have been with the organization for a long time now. It's been about 12 years, I think. And I live in Norwood, Massachusetts, and soon to be Walpole, Massachusetts, actually. And let's see, I'm a camp counselor right now for the YMCA in Newton, Massachusetts for preschool age children. And I'm really excited.
We all need to take it easy on Santara. She's had a long day with 3-year-olds, which is a lot. Lena?
Yeah, so I'm Lena. I'm also a young adult living with Spina Bifida. I'm 21 years old, so a lot of my involvement with SPAGNI started when I was a little bit younger and kind of participating in some of the like youth empowerment events, and now I've kind of aged up to doing some of the mentoring side of things. Yeah.
Awesome. And Grace?
Hi, my name is Grace. I've been a part of the SPAGNI organization for about as long as I can remember. My family has been involved for many, many years. And I'm currently a college student going into my 3rd year. And that school is in New York. And I forget if I already said I'm from Massachusetts, but I am. Yeah, so.
Awesome, thank you. And actually, before we get started, can you guys all talk a little bit about, I know 2 of you are still in school, but talk a little bit about what you're studying and what your future plans are. And then maybe Sarah and Santara, if you can talk about what your jobs are and your, job goals. So just jump in. I don't need to call names out. It's not school.
All right, I'll go first. So I manage a winery in Portland here called 1820 Wines. We make all of our wine out of rhubarb. We don't use grapes at all. I'm pretty much the only employee. We're a small 3, and we all work really hard to get the wine out there. We hand press all the rhubarb, we hand bottle, label, the whole thing. We have a little tasting room space right in Portland. And I just revamped the whole thing, which has been great. It's allowed me a lot of creativity because I like to do art. I paint custom pet portraits on the side, but I was able to kind of take this space at the winery and turn it into something I'm really proud of. So I'm very excited about that. I'm very passionate about my job right now, and it's a really supportive working environment, which is amazing.
That's awesome. Actually, can we find that on Facebook or Instagram or?
Yeah, so it's 1820 Wines, all spelled out. But if you type in the numbers, you'll find it as well. And that's the year Maine became a state. So fun fact too.
Awesome. So it's educational as well as delicious. All right, awesome. Santara, what are you doing these days?
So I am, for the summer, I am a camp counselor at the West Suburban YMCA in Newton, Massachusetts. Our camp is currently, this week we have about 150 children, 150 kids that we are servicing all the way from age 3 to teenagers. I am one of the counselors for the 3 and 4-year-olds. So this week, we currently have about 11 children. So that is my new full-time job, and requires a lot of energy and stamina.
And
But
patience.
it's really fun, and I love it.
That's awesome. And Grace, what are you studying?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned before, I am a college student currently. I'm in the music industry program at my school. I'm kind of leaning towards, pursuing artist management, but there's actually a lot of options within the music industry, so that can always change. But yeah, that's pretty much what's taking up the majority of my time currently.
That's very cool. Very cool. And Lena, how about you? What are you studying?
Yeah, so I'm a student at Northeastern right now in Boston. I'm a 4th year out of 5 years, studying psychology with minors in health science and law and public policy. And just this past week, I started my second co-op, which is like a 6-month full-time internship, basically, but it's a full-time job at the Social Innovation Forum, which is like a nonprofit kind of place in Boston.
That's an excellent organization. That's going to be a really cool experience, I think. All right. Well, so ladies, we have just a bunch of questions that I'm going to throw out and you can discuss. You don't have to all respond to every question if you don't want to, but and we've gathered these questions from some of our memberships. So just to start off with, what does inclusion look like to you or feel like to you?
One thing that I think is kind of crucial to inclusion is not the absence of accommodation, but like the lack of need for accommodation. So to be truly included isn't to like walk into a space and say, hey, I really need X, Y, and Z for this to be here or for me to feel comfortable, but rather to go into that space and have that already be a given and have people already kind of looking at you as an equal and things not really needing to be accommodated for, like I said.
Mm-hmm. That's an excellent point.
Yeah, I mean, I would even say that, true accommodation really comes out of a change in attitude towards people with disabilities. I think that there's a lot of reluctance to provide proper accommodations with, just public spaces in general, or like venues, just because there's, a lot of extra work involved, and, it's just people think that it's not worth it, but I just think that there needs to be a change in attitude to say that, we exist. It is worth it. We deserve to have access to all these places that everybody else has access to.
No, very well said. I'm not the first person to say this, but I've heard so many people say if everything were built to be fully accessible, it would be accessible to everyone, right? So it's not like people who don't need accommodations can't go in. It would just, just make everything so much more of an open playing field for everybody. Grace, you mentioned this a little bit, but how do you guys feel about people asking you questions about your disability, or how do you prefer that they approach that?
I think that I've always been very comfortable with people asking about it, but I think the part that's kind of the gray area that makes it an uncomfortable situation is people almost asking you, but forcing you to be the one to ask them if they want to ask you. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense to anybody. Kind of being put in a situation where like you're getting a look where there's a question, but you're the one who has to verbalize it and say, did you want to ask me something? Do you want to know something about this? I think that's one of the hardest parts in that scenario. But I think that I mean, I'm very open about it. I've tried to be proactive with talking about it before questions are asked, I guess, and not out of obligation, but just out of a way of sharing my experiences with people and like helping other people understand what's going on. I don't know. I'm open to people asking me questions. I think that we live in such a society where no one is really taught to talk about those things. Like people at a young age aren't really comfortable asking those questions. So it kind of becomes this prolonged process where, you know, we go through these things as kids where like we're getting stared at instead of someone asking you a question. You know, I think there needs to we got to bridge the gap there so people feel more comfortable asking us questions if that's, and asking permission, you know, to do so. It's kind of like asking permission if someone needs help, you know, saying, do you mind if I help you with this? Or, you know, even now with all the aftermath of like the past year and the ongoing problems, like now we're in a place where people are saying, hey, we should probably ask if you want to be hugged. But like, why are we just doing that now? You know, I think that all is so interconnected.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I really think that, you know, asking permission for a lot of things is a really good thing to bring up because there are some questions that, you know, are simply inappropriate to ask anybody, not like, let alone somebody with a disability. So I just think it's important to preface it by saying, is it all right if I ask you something personal? And you know, you might say no, in which case you wouldn't have to hear the question at all. But I think that it happens a lot where people sort of, for some reason, assume that people with disabilities are kind of an open book about you know, how we live our lives, the things that we have to deal with, like super personal, almost kind of invasive questions. And I just think that people should really consider more like, would I want to be asked this question? You know, especially if we're talking about an interaction with a stranger, which happens frequently, actually, surprisingly. But yeah, I just think it's just kind of, some things are kind of like a common sense kind of thing where it's like, if you would be uncomfortable with this question, perhaps maybe you shouldn't ask this other person. You know what I mean?
I think so much of it too is like the language of everything and like people not knowing what the right kind of language is. And there's so much like ableist language out there that is so common. So when we're met with questions, you know, people say it in an inappropriate way right off the bat, even if they don't inherently know what they're doing. And like that comes back to like starting the education like younger and teaching kids like what's appropriate to say, you know, what kind of language is the right thing to say. Like, don't walk up to someone and say, what's wrong with you? That's not how you handle it. No one wants to be asked that.
And that is why I want to include disability awareness when I am in the classroom. I agree that it's very important to start that conversation early. And my 3 and 4 year olds ask me questions every day about my chair and all the cool things it does. And that's really cute. But, you know, I have had my share of adults that have asked some very interesting questions, and I agree with you guys. You know, we need to be more aware of the intention of the questions and who's asking, and you know where it's coming from. And again, thinking like, should I really be asking this? And if you have to ask yourself that question, chances are the answer is probably no.
Also, just along with the idea of kind of asking permission to ask questions, I think it's also really important for people who are asking questions to accept our answers at face value. Like if I were to answer a question and you feel like maybe it wasn't the whole truth or like you need some clarification, that's probably by design. It's probably because I don't really want to completely get into it with you. So, you know, asking a lot of follow-up questions can be kind of irritating unless I kind of offer up that opportunity of like, oh, does that make sense? Like kind of, you know, there's indicators of opening up a conversation versus closing a conversation, and just kind of being very perceptive of how the person's demeanor is when you're asking them things.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Sounds like all of you are very experienced in handling these kinds of situations.
Yeah, and if I could just piggyback off of what Lena was saying, there was this TV show that I used to watch where one of the characters was in a wheelchair, and there was an episode where at the beginning, this other character wanted to know why he was in a wheelchair. This character that was in a wheelchair, and you know, throughout the episode, he was just kind of coming up with like silly ways to try and slip it into the conversation. But at the end of the episode, there was like a serious moment where the character was like, "But like for real, do you mind if I ask about why you were in a wheelchair?" And the character in a wheelchair said, "You know, that's kind of personal. I'd rather not talk about it." You know, the character said okay, and then for the rest of the series, it was never brought up again. And I think that that was like really cool, because I think that, you know, it kind of shows that there's a boundary, that, you know, some questions are okay to ask, but as you know, Lena, as you were saying, the person asking the question should be, you know, able to accept whatever the answer is, even if it's just, I don't want to talk about it, that's really personal, you know?
You know, that's a great point, Grace. I feel like television is, or, you know, whatever media is such an opportunity to model those kinds of situations, conversations, boundaries, all of that. Do you guys, what do you see in media that you think is positive, or what, you know, what do you think could be better? I think representation is so important, and there's not a ton. I think maybe it's increasing a bit, but there's not a ton of representation about people with disabilities in, you know, TV shows, movies, all of it. What are you, I mean, and Grace, you're heading into sort of that at least tangentially related industry in the music industry. What are your thoughts about all of that?
Sorry. So you mean just like representation in general?
Yeah, I think I just rambled for a while there, but yes.
That's okay. Yeah. I think that it's definitely getting better. Like, there have been several instances of disability representation that was like just flat out wrong or offensive or inappropriate in some way. But I do think that recent television and maybe movies are getting a little bit better, but it's all through you know, disability representation at all. It's still so rare. And I think that that is why people who don't have disabilities don't quite understand how to act around people with disabilities. And I think that that's where all the inappropriate, invasive questions come from, because I guess some people need others to tell them that, like, hey, maybe don't ask people invasive questions like that, you know?
Yeah.
In my opinion, it's very difficult to have positive representation of a minority group when that minority group wasn't involved in the creation of it. And at least speaking from like my perspective as a person with a disability, like the characters that I've seen portrayed on TV shows and movies, like it's very obvious to me which ones are actually like represented or like played by a person or written by a person with a disability versus the ones that clearly aren't. And it has a lot to do with just like how they handle the character, and like you can make jokes about disability without it being like the punchline being this person is disabled. And I found that like shows like the TV show Special on Netflix, that was written like by and played by an actor with cerebral palsy, and like his experiences on the show are just so like I feel so represented by them, whereas like Artie from Glee, for example, like not at all.
I'm gonna write
Yeah.
that one down. I haven't seen that one. I'll have to check that out. Special?
Yeah, it's a little bit PG-13, but it is really, really good representation.
All right.
in
Well,
my
I'm
opinion.
over 13, so I think I'm all right. But we'll just when we recommend that. Thank you.
Yeah, just for anyone watching.
Okay.
Any parents, I don't know.
Yes, parents. That is PG-13. Okay. Thank you. Are there any other, I mean, that's a great topic. Are there other shows that you guys have seen or that you would recommend that you thought were well done?
There is a show on Hulu. I believe it's on Hulu. It's called Speechless, and it's about. Lena, do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, it's it is also about a character with cerebral palsy, and it's not like just him, but like it's about his whole family, and the actor himself actually has that disability, and so many episodes of that show tackle what it's like to live as a person with a disability, or being in growing up in a family with like a sibling with a disability, being a parent, all that. And all those topics I feel in that show were tackled really, really well.
Awesome.
And I think it definitely had to do with the fact that one of the actors has a disability.
Is that also a PG-13 type show?
Oh my gosh, I haven't seen it in a while. It's not like a kids show, but I think in general it's pretty appropriate.
Preview before they.
Yeah, I think
I think it's
check
pretty
it out.
family friendly.
Yeah, I think it is in general pretty family friendly.
All right, well, these are great recommendations. I hadn't even thought of this when we started, but I think this is really great. Do you guys have other suggestions, Sarah or Santara, stuff that you've seen?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now.
Well, we all have some new shows to binge watch then, so that's exciting. So when you guys are having a challenging time for any reason, because of life, because of a disability or anything, what do you guys do to sort of lift yourselves up or empower yourselves? It's more of a self-care question, really.
I think something that's really helpful for me is writing things down. I think I get really overwhelmed when it's like all just in my head and there's a ton of things going on and a ton of things to remember, and like there's an appointment for this and there's something for that, and I get just really frustrated and kind of shut down a little bit. But if I take out a notebook and I can write stuff down, and like I just got a new calendar, like a nice big one to hang on my wall so I can visualize all the things I'm juggling and what I'm doing. That is just so much more helpful for me. It just changes everything. I can see it and like compartmentalize things and just kind of bring it back down.
That's awesome. Good management system.
I kind of agree with that. I have a variety of coping skills that I use for like stress management and anxiety and stuff. It's let's see, I have coloring, I have watching my Harry Potter movies, or reading the books. I was doing the latch hooking projects for a while. I got to get back into that. And I have like a lot of guided meditation things that I do, and just when in doubt, pick up the phone and call a friend, I would say, is a really helpful tool. Or maybe go to Sarah's winery and have a glass of wine.
If you're over 21.
I also just got I got this new little journal that's called like do something that makes you happy every day, but it's filled with all these different cool little prompts that are like, I don't know, name like a food that makes you feel really good or something like that. They're all really random. And instead of like going through every single day, I'm just opening it up, and whatever page I open up to is the page I'm going to do for the day. So that kind of keeps it interesting. It's a little more unpredictable, but it's like, I don't know, it feels good to just have that. And then I can look back on it and be like, what was good that day? Or what was I thinking or feeling that day?
That's really cool.
I have this thing when I'm having a hard time where I just like, I need to laugh. Like I need to find something that will make me laugh and feel better. So I watch a lot of John Mulaney has like 3 comedy specials on Netflix, and like I've seen all 3 of them like a million times, but it's like it's my comfort content. So that's what I go to when I'm like, you know, just not having a good time. And it used to also be that show The Office, but they did take it off of Netflix, so I can't do that anymore. But I do like stand-up comedy, so I do tend to like watch that if I just like need to unwind and react or relax a little bit.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Laughter is the best medicine, right? That's what they say. So that's really true for you. I think that's a great tip. I never thought of that.
Yeah, I like to do just anything that will remove me from like my phone and like, or at least like my notifications, because that's something that I get really overwhelmed with. Like thinking about the million things that are happening in the world or happening in my life or whatever. So doing something where like I'm not with my phone, either I'm hanging out with my friends or like doing a craft or like painting or reading or something.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
Awesome. So 2 of you are in the workplace, 2 of you are headed for the workplace. What do you look for in a workplace that makes it more accessible to you, so that you can work more independently? Sarah, you talked a little bit about this with your new opportunity at the winery, about how it's really a great situation for you.
Yeah, I feel really lucky to work at this place. The owners of the company are just so supportive of me, and I think something that I've really realized, I've had, I don't even know how many jobs I've had at this point, but I think the biggest thing for me is that I don't want to be expected to act like a robot all of the time. People have bad days, and that happens, and it's okay to have a bad day. And I think especially in the customer service industry, it's something I've seen happen time and time again, where we are supposed to be, the face of the company. We're supposed to show every single person that walks through the door a great time. That is really hard some days. And you get burnt out, you get tired. It's hard to smile all day and talk to tourists and talk to like negative people. You never know what kind of customers you're going to get. And I think I see everyone, like, people get punished for not being 100% peppy, happy, cheery constantly. And that becomes really hard. We need like more of an outlet to be able to just have those feelings. And I think there's a productive way to have those feelings and get things out without disrupting your workflow. Because if you don't get it out, then you're really going to disrupt the whole workflow. But I feel like, finally for the first time, I'm allowed to like be an actual person. Like I'm a person who has things and problems and appointments, and they're really flexible about if I need to take time off. And I think like my mental health is more important than most of the other things, which makes me so much more of a better worker and employee. And it shows, that makes a big difference.
Wow, that sounds like you've landed in a great spot.
Yeah, they're awesome. It's great. And I think like I work really well from positive reinforcement. So just like hearing little things of gratitude, like getting a text saying, hey, great job today, or something that was really unique to this position is like we worked really hard in December, like November, December. And one of my Christmas gifts from the owners of the company was a subscription to a CSA. So every week I got to go pick up a bunch of fresh vegetables. And I thought that was just like one of the coolest things a workplace has ever done for me, because it was like something to look forward to every week. And it was a healthy thing for me. and it felt like they really knew me by giving me that. So
Oh, that's fabulous.
yeah, it was really great.
Wow.
So my workplace has also been really accommodating. That's one of the things I love about the YMCA is they're all about inclusion and, making accommodations and everything. And, already from even starting in training, they started planning for different things. For example, they had me test out the playground and the terrain and everything because it's all mulch and wood chips and everything. And it was fine during training, but fun fact, and I'm going to say this to you too. Our group is the very last group to be out there, if at all. And I didn't account for the wood chips being moved around throughout the day. And there's like a lip that I need to not only get down, but also get over. And I got stuck in the mulch on the first day of camp.
Oh, no.
Oh.
And so day 2, the maintenance people were right on it, and they were testing out different mats and different types of things to create like a surface that I wouldn't get stuck in again. I felt so bad. We have these walkie-talkies, and so I had to call leadership, and between one of the higher ups and one of the other guy counselors, they got me out of the mulch, but it was just like, oh my goodness. And then also in our classroom where we have the kids, we actually, I didn't know this was possible actually after trying to get down to the 3-year-old level. I got out of my chair. That was the easy part. Getting back in was not quite as easy, but we actually discovered that the tables were actually adjustable, which is really cool. And so they just took a wrench and adjusted the table, and it goes pretty high actually. It's like at my level, but they tested it out with the kids as well, and they're not drowning in their seats. So and they're like really great about coming up with ideas as we go, and really accommodating with also breaks and making sure everybody is doing well mentally and emotionally and all of that, and there to talk to people. The first day was really stressful. I was like a basket case because we were figuring things out, which I got to in my little perfect world but one of the leadership team they talked to me, and so everybody's been really great about inclusion and all that.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Hopefully they've solved the mulch issue permanently.
Luckily the kids they end up napping so much, and they're so slow in the afternoon that most of the time we actually don't end up going outside. But when we do, it's much better. I also learned that I can't stay in the mulch for an extended amount of time.
Yep. Excellent. So Lena and Grace, what are you, as you think about, in the next year, 2 years, entering the workforce, what kinds of factors will you be looking at in jobs that are going to help you make a decision about, why this place versus that place? And, what are your thoughts as you start to think about that?
Well, for one, equal pay would be nice. I know that there's, some people with disabilities are in general paid less. which is terrible. But aside from that, that's a whole bigger issue. As opposed to, accommodation at any workplace. If I could have an employer that is willing to accommodate, if you have somebody who's reluctant, you may still be able to get what you need, but you really just need somebody who, understands that you're a person with a disability and, isn't just kind of a stick in the mud about any kind of change or any kind of thing that you might need to be able to get to be able to kind of be productive, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, really just echoing what everyone else said. To Grace's point about equal pay, that's something that I've made a really big point for myself, like early on in my career, because Northeastern gives us so many like experiential learning opportunities. I've really gone through the like job application process and like working full-time twice now. So I've always negotiated higher pay for myself because I know like this is what I'm worth. I have the skills to do this job. So that's just kind of one thing that I like to get into the habit of as a young person. So when I'm like entering like the real workforce, that's something I'm kind of being aware of. And then the other thing is just flexibility is something that I really appreciate in a work environment, especially with all the technology that we have in general. And then in the past year of COVID, there have been so many things kind of implemented, so many accommodations that now that, everyone in the world needs X, Y, and Z, workplaces have made it possible to like work remotely and do all sorts of things. So something that I will probably look for forever in jobs now is workplaces that, are flexible with if you need to take a day to work from home, if you need a doctor's appointment, if you need to move your schedule around and, work until 6 so then you can have a doctor's appointment in the middle of the day. And just general flexibility with that kind of thing is important to me.
Have you guys, any of you, tried any sites like there's inclusively.com is kind of a new, it's like a LinkedIn for people with disabilities, but also so all of the companies that they have postings for are companies that are committed to a fully inclusive work environment. And there's another one, I think it might be called the 500. Don't quote me on that one, but do some Googling. I'm just kind of curious if you've checked any of those out or if that's a tool that you would use the next time that you're looking for a job.
I didn't even think about how those exist, so thank you.
Yeah.
My only concern with one of those things would be that it's workplaces looking to fulfill some kind of quota.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know anything about it, but that would be the only reason that I would potentially be wary of such a thing.
We've had a little bit of interaction with Inclusively, and I think that, they definitely go beyond that in terms of their vetting. But I don't know anybody that's personally, gone through the placement experience with them. So I was kind of curious about that. But if you ever do, I would love to get your feedback on that. Hopefully that will be more of a trend going forward. More companies having just learned a lot of lessons in the last 18 months about what is possible will be making their workplaces more accessible. But then you also get to the separate question, and Grace touched on this regarding pay and benefits and how that affects or kind of caps your pay. That's a big challenge, I think, for a lot of people in the disability community and sort of a disincentive for working full time. I don't know if you guys have experienced that or know people who have experienced that.
Yeah, that's something that's been a big topic for me. I think it was like my last few jobs. I ended up losing my state health insurance because I made too much money, and it's such a big problem. I mean, we could have a whole nother session to talk about all that stuff, I think, but
These are the topics we talk about at Teal on the Hill, right, Sarah?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're gonna stop with this.
Yeah.
It's frustrating though. It's so incredibly disheartening to be put in such a box in so many different ways, to say, well, you should work, but like not too much. And we're going to take note that you're like disabled, but you're either too disabled or not disabled enough to qualify for these things. And it's so, so frustrating. And I don't even know where to begin with all of it. You know, it's not set up to succeed, so we have to try really, really hard.
Right.
In Massachusetts, SSI is the same way, and SSDI as well, as far as those benefits go. So I definitely feel what you're paying with that, Sarah.
Yep. Yeah, and then other stuff like getting married, you know, like all these like kind of basic things that people are doing are things that we are also encouraged to do, but then once we do them, so many of our benefits are taken away from us, and then we're forced to, you know, be in a situation where we're struggling. And I also think that people don't know about that, so people make decisions without taking that into consideration, and then they're in trouble and they don't know what to do with it after.
That's an excellent point. You shouldn't have to consider those
No.
as you're getting married and going through, you know, the normal phases of life.
Yeah, and just the amount of money that they kind of cap you off at making is like not a livable amount of money. So it's just it's a very unfair system.
Yeah, that's incredibly challenging. So that's probably one easy one, but what are some other things that you wish people would consider more about including disabled people or people with a disability in more independent community? Fixing the wage factor, the pay, you know, pay equity and how it relates to benefits obviously is a huge one.
This is more of just kind of a social aspect, but something that I've seen from my own experiences, but then also like my friends in the disability community, are people like, as a way of including them, like almost just talking down to people with disabilities and making it very obvious that like they don't actually care about this as this person, but care about like helping this poor like person with a disability. Like they have such a hard life, I'm doing such a good thing for including them or talking to them. So I guess just what I would want people to know is that it's very obvious when intentions are bad, and that you're not a good person just for interacting with someone who you think of as being less fortunate than you in some way.
Maybe we need a t-shirt that says I'm not your good deed for the day.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely. I would wear that every day.
Oh,
Maybe we should do that.
let's absolutely do that.
Also, unsolicited prayers are not my fave.
Yeah, like I understand that those are well intentioned, but it's really just like you can save it, you know.
Something I've experienced a lot working in a customer service setting for like, I don't know, the better part of the last decade, I would say, is if I'm having, I don't know, like I have a lot of pain. I have arthritis in my ankle, and that's been like one of the biggest things I've struggled with in the last few years. And as a bartender, you know, I do a lot of walking around, and I'll have customers notice if I'm limping, and I'll be walking by just, I don't know, picking up glassware, and someone will say, "You're having a rough day, huh? What's wrong with you? What's going on over there?" And that's a really weird thing to do. It's just, I would never say that to someone. You know, if I were like at a bar having a drink, I would not say that to somebody. So I think it's like, I don't know, just as much as it's on like the company, I think it's on the customer as well to kind of create an inclusive environment.
I feel like so much of what we're talking about just really comes down to common courtesy and treating everyone the way that you would like to be treated yourself. I feel like, Santara, that must be something that you guys talk about with your kids all the time.
Oh yeah.
You know, when they're little, and how do we not carry those lessons forward with us as we age.
Right, definitely. I too have had my fair share of working in classrooms of youngsters and teachers who don't think I should be teaching young children because I'm in a wheelchair, and yeah, it's so ridiculous. And it's actually funny because at this job, the woman that hired me, and actually the day that they were adjusting tables for me, I was having a conversation with the woman that hired me, and was telling her, I really appreciate, all that you guys are doing, and I feel really included and all of this stuff. And I was explaining that I've had my fair share of teachers out there that don't think I should be teaching young children, and she genuinely just looked at me and said, why? And I was like, well, because of the elephant in the room, as I like to call it. And she was like, oh yeah, I would never judge on that. And I was just like, okay, wow. Like what a difference, like from one person to another, one experience to another. I was just like, okay, all right, this is definitely the right place to work.
But that's such an example of just common courtesy, like
Yeah.
Jean said.
So
It is.
Telling this story as if it's this really positive experience, but it's just basic human decency.
It should be the way it is, right?
It shouldn't be that unusual for you to have that kind of a conversation, right?
Yeah.
Like, that should be the norm, and it's
Right.
it sounds like
Yeah.
it's an exception for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just and like the preschool teacher from like 6 years ago, like one of her comments was actually about getting down to the kids level, and this woman at the Y was like, well, you're kind of already down at that level because you're sitting down, and that other teacher had some stuff to say about that and how big and scary my wheelchair was and all that stuff. Yeah. It was a big thing.
Oh.
Sarah, get some rhubarb after this conversation.
I will say that is a weird comment because I've never had a child legitimately scared of my mobility device. I've had all kids are curious about it, but no one's ever like,
they're the cutest. They ask me every day to do, like, to press the buttons on my chair, and to see like all the different things that my chair does, and it's so cool to them. And she was talking about disclosure, and you should have disclosed ahead of time because the children need time to emotionally prepare for that situation. And yeah, it was crazy. But
who is this person?
I'll message you, Lena. And
Okay,
Sarah.
Wow.
Bye.
Oh my
Oh
goodness.
man.
I feel like I have to say that all negative interactions I've had with anyone regarding my disability
Yeah.
has never been with a child. It's always been fully grown adults.
Oh yeah.
And
No,
every interaction regarding my disability with a child has been positive, or maybe a little bit like, oh, I don't know if you should say that, but it's never been outwardly like bad. Like it almost seems like kids have better manners than some adults,
Oh, that's the funny thing though, is the kids were 4 and 5 and they were completely fine with it. This woman, this grown woman who supposedly had been a teacher for 20 years, she was clearly freaking out, and I don't think she's ever seen a wheelchair, but that's a different story. But yeah, no, it's so interesting how children are so they, as we always say, like they need to be taught to be judgmental and critical and all of that. And, they learn it from their role models, unfortunately. So, I try to be more of a positive role model for the kids that I work with, at least. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I think you guys are right. I think things are often harder for adults than for children, right? To process or to be open to. And I think, what I'm hearing you say is sort of a natural curiosity is totally welcome. But a sort of a preconceived judgment, obviously, that should be kept to oneself.
Right.
I just don't understand how someone like those kids are definitely going to be scared of your wheelchair. Like where is that even coming from?
Right. They needed time to emotionally prepare. Like, come on, lady.
Yeah.
How does a 3-year-old emotionally prepare for something? I have 4 children and I've never seen them successfully emotionally prepare themselves for something when they were 3 years old. That's
not in a child's vocabulary. They
Right.
just react immediately to whatever.
Yeah.
It's not, they don't get ready for things.
You're exactly right.
Especially when they're 4 years old. Like
No.
they're not getting ready to go to summer camp and looking at themselves in the mirror and being like, all right, so we're going to summer camp today. Got to emotionally prepare for this. They're like giving themselves a little pep talk.
Oh.
Well, it's funny now. Maybe it wasn't so funny when it happened, but
No.
Grace, that's to go back to your coping mechanism of you got to find the humor sometimes.
Very important.
Yeah.
Because sometimes kids do ask rather inappropriate questions, but they don't know any better.
Right.
They're here to learn.
Yeah.
What do you guys consider sort of tips, tricks, life hacks, keys to your success in living independently and, continuing to sort of expand your comfort zone and move out into the world? I know, Sarah, you talked a lot about just like organizational strategies, which I think everybody needs, disability or not. We all have to figure out how our brain works and how to manage it the best.
Yeah, I need to really emotionally prepare for that got good. Yeah, I think organization is really important, and it's really not necessarily one of my strong suits. I think I definitely have more of like a messy, creative sort of brain. But there are definitely organizational things that I can handle, like I said, writing down on the calendar, or like at the winery, I have Post-it notes placed throughout the winery. So when I think of something, I write it down on one of the Post-it notes because my brain is like a million ideas happening all at once. And I know that I'll lose it if I don't write it down. So, and I also know that I'm moving around a lot and I won't necessarily have a notepad with me all the time. So I've like strategically placed my Post-it notes in places that I frequent a lot in the building so I can write stuff down. And that's been very helpful for me, I think.
That's super strategic.
Yeah. Other than that, I don't know. I think that being like upfront about my needs has been a really helpful thing too. And kind of, you really, when we talk about this all the time, you really have to be a self-advocate in so many different scenarios in your life. But I just think that I have like, X, Y, Z or non-negotiable needs that I have, and being upfront about that is really important to me. Helps with my confidence. It just helps with the outcomes of whatever's going to happen. Just being able to stand up for yourself and say like, that's not going to work for me.
That's excellent.
Kind of going off of that a little bit. This might not be for everyone, but kind of for me, I've grown increasingly more comfortable as I've gotten older with sharing with the close people in my life, like more about myself and more about my disability, and even some of the things that kind of might be more embarrassing. It's been a lot easier on me to kind of just have the people who are close to me know everything up front, so that if I'm in a situation where like I need to get to a bathroom or something like that, or like I need to leave a place because I don't have a catheter on me, I can literally just say that to my friend and have them understand immediately, rather than having to kind of like make up an excuse or like figure out a way to say something that's going to get across like my needs while respecting my privacy. Where for myself, I've just kind of grown comfortable with not being super private about certain things, and that's been helpful to me.
That's excellent. I'm sure that was hard to do though. I mean, I'm sure that's a process.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's actually another question. It's kind of related to another question I was going to ask, which is just kind of, what do you do when you encounter a surprise situation that's like hard for you to manage or not really inclusive? And I think, to your point, Lena, having a close circle of friends that you can trust to support you or understand at least what's happening is really, really critical to that.
Yeah, definitely. Like as long as there's one person in the room like willing to help you with a situation, that makes any unexpected situation so much easier. At least I think. Because they also might have like if you had a friend or someone trusted with you, they might have a little bit more of an objective perspective of the situation and how to solve it, whereas you might be like more stressed and emotional about it in the moment.
I've definitely realized, and like I'm not always great at putting it into practice, but a lot of times when these scenarios come up, or if like something stressful is happening, if I just say it out loud, it's like a huge weight off my shoulders. Just like saying the words out loud, even if there isn't an immediate solution, if I say it to one other person, I feel so much better after. If I'm like, oh no, what am I going to do in this scenario? I've got to do this one thing and I can't possibly do it, and this is happening, and like I'm having the problem, I don't know, anything could happen. I've got like a sore, or I feel like there's something going on with my stomach, or like I have a UTI, I think, and all that stuff. If I just keep it to myself, I'll just go around and around and around with it, and then it gets really bad. But if I just like look at someone and I'm like, this is happening right now, then I'm able to be like, okay, now I can take a deep breath, and I like, now that it's out there, we can figure it out.
Yeah.
So you've identified the problem and now you can work towards a solution.
Exactly, yeah. And it sounds so easy when I say it, but then I'm not always the best at putting it into practice, and I need to constantly tell myself, like, you're stressed about this, just say it out loud. Don't wait for it to become a thing where then you're suddenly crying in a place and no one knows why.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I feel like, just to add on to what everyone has been saying, I think that if you're having some sort of situation where like a community of people might be able to help you, like you might be able to find somebody in a certain community to like help you with something. Like I remember, I believe it was my freshman year of college, my walker, the one of the handles just broke. It was unusable, and I need that to get around. So I was, it had only been a few months at college, and I didn't really know like what I was supposed to do. But my mother had the idea to reach out to, we're Unitarian Universalist, and there was a UU church like really close to campus. So my mother actually reached out to that community and asked, like, does anyone have a spare walker for the meantime? And somebody did, and I got a spare walker. So I just think that if there's any kind of community that's near you that like might have somebody who can help you with a certain situation, please don't be afraid to ask, because you never know.
Yep. Well, and several of you said this, but just the giving yourself permission to ask for what you need is so important. Right? Everybody should do that.
Yes, one of the biggest things I took from our leadership group that we did earlier on is you're only needy when your needs aren't being met. And I say it all the time. And I've
Another great
all
teacher.
time.
We're cutting
Yeah.
the whole line of
I
tonight.
actually quote Rita like once a week.
Yeah. I plug in my battery. Sorry. You guys keep talking while I plug that in. The last thing we need is for this to turn off.
Yeah, I just think it's so important to be okay with needing things because we all need things.
Yes, absolutely.
And people are also very willing to help most of the time. And oftentimes I've gotten myself really worked up about asking for something, just to realize that the ask wasn't actually that big of a deal. Like it wasn't like a strenuous question for someone else. It was completely fine.
Right. No, but most of us, we don't want to ruffle feathers or, feel like we're bothering people or being an inconvenience or, things like that. But we're really not,
Yeah, and I think if you have a fear like that, that's why I almost feel like if there's a group of people you can ask, then, somebody can volunteer. And that way, you know that that person wants to help you, because if they didn't want to, they wouldn't have volunteered,
Yep. Great. Any other thoughts that you guys have? Anything else on your mind? This has just been a great conversation. It wasn't by design, but it was really delightful that we ended up with a nice group of women, strong, independent women. That's excellent representation right there.
I don't know. I think I'm just like happy to have this community, and I hope that other people can watch this and take something from it. And I think these are conversations that we are going to continue to have for a really long time, and they're important ones to have. And we need to not be afraid to keep the dialogue going, and to, as women with disabilities, especially like learning to navigate the world right now. It's hard. It's really hard in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of things working against us, a lot of things that aren't ideal. But we have a great support group here. And I know that extends like all throughout the country. There are people like us, and that's like the beauty of the whole thing.
Absolutely. There's a lot of power in community. And I'm so grateful to all of you for just spending the time, being willing to be a little vulnerable and share your personal experiences and your insights with everybody else. And I think that really goes a long way towards increasing other people's comfort level and helping them find their own voice and remind themselves that, you should just ask for what you need. Everyone needs to do that. That's really important. And it seems like that's kind of the takeaway from this, what it boils down to in terms of living independently. And it takes many different forms, what your needs are, but just remembering that that's what, you don't need permission to ask for what you need. You just need.
Yeah.
Well, awesome.
Thank you all.
Thank you guys very much. This has been great. We will post this to our YouTube channel and we will share it. I think we're going to post it on Thursday, the 15th. So look for it then.
Nice.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. This was really great. Bye.
Bye.